water for yourself. We do have markings on the bleachers to protect you for social distancing. You'll see some little blue stripes. So we do ask that you keep your mask on just to protect yourself and to protect each other. This morning, there is also a restroom that is open right over here in the pavilion. So let me just go over a couple things before we get started. None of us are going to be lecturing you. This is not a presentation. The purpose for today is for us to hear you, to listen to you. It was very hard for the board to be on Zoom and to not see you and to hear you out. So we felt that it was critically important that we have a public forum so that you can be heard. We are streaming live. There are several people that did want to come, so just so you understand, because I know this was brought up on Thursday night, there are a lot of people that did want to come, but some people are afraid to come out yet in public, first and foremost, and some people just want to watch it live. So we had, I think, over, how many people, Jim, did we have watching
50,
it?
Over 50.
Over 50 people watched it live stream, and we also are going to interpret. We're going to change it into Spanish as well, so we have a Spanish version of it, so we'll keep you posted about that. So just a couple of ground rules for everybody, for all of us this morning. I am not going to time you. I'm going to ask you to kind of just regulate your own time if possible. If you can keep your thoughts and what you want to share to about 3 minutes, and just make sure that everybody gets a chance to be heard. You can certainly come up, talk again. You can add whatever you want throughout the day, but we just want to make sure everybody has a chance to be heard. Now, a couple things. We do have microphones. We ask that when you want to speak, that you just walk over to the mic. Just be very careful because it's on the bleachers. We ask you to try not to touch the mic because several people will be coming up to it, so we want to protect each and every one of you. Crazy rules. We have crazy times right now, I know. So first, the purpose of our forum today is to talk about equity and to hear your thoughts. And every public forum, we want to end with a call to action. After we hear each other's thoughts, after we respect each other's thoughts, because sometimes it's hard to hear what other people say if you don't agree with it, but we're all going to be, listening and respecting. We're going to end with a call to action. And what are we going to do together? How are we going to work together to make our district the best it can be for every single student? Every student that walks through the door, no matter what race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, we have to make sure that we welcome all of our students with open arms. So we will be, talking about the call to action at the very end. As we get started, I just want to do a few introductions. I'm just going to go around just with some of the staff that is here and the board members that are here to listen to you. And I thank everybody for coming out on this Saturday morning, first and foremost. So thank you for being here. So over on our right over here, we have our Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations, Mr. Victor Carlson. We have our Dr. Harrington as our Director of HR. Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction. We have Dr. Michelle Gosh. Up here we have Mr. John Clark, our Principal of Wells. Our Administrator, I want to hear you too. Also, Maggie Andriello is our Principal of CV Star. Mr. Jim Trelaw is our Director of Technology and Innovation, and Chris Whalen is also one of our great IT people. Thanks, Chris, for being here. So they are streaming live for everyone right now. I have our Board President, Ms. Sonia Masika. We have Mr. Glenn Niles, Board Trustee. Mr. Eric Grutzner, Board Trustee. Mr. Scott Seaman, Board Trustee. We have also with us Mrs. Carrie Cunningham. She is Vice President of the Board. And all the way down there, I can't recognize it. Is that Liz? Okay, we have Dr. Kennedy, our Director of PPS. Also, we have Mr. Paul Stulacci, our Assistant Director of People Personnel Service. We have Deputy Kraske, who's here. He's one of our SROs. He's stationed at the high school. I'm sure many of you know him. And also Mr. Glenn Fryer is our Director of Facilities, and I want to thank him and his crew for the setup this morning. So once again, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. So we'd like to get started, and what I'm going to do is you just come up to the mic. There's a mic over here, mic over there. Please don't touch the mic, but please come up to the mic and just give us your thoughts this morning that you'd like to share. We want to hear your thoughts, priorities. So, yeah. Okay. So So, all right, we have somebody's going to get us started. Thank you. And also, please state your name, just so we know.
I hope you can hear me. I'm Yolanda Castro Arce. I actually moved here 23 years ago. And oddly enough, I only moved here looking at school systems. My poor husband and I checked out about 15, 20 school systems, and this was the one. And this is where we came 23 years ago just for the school system. I made the right choice. I have a son at Harvard Law School, and I have another one at NYU School of Journalism. So I made the right choice. Now, when we first came here, there was a lot of racism. It still exists, not at the magnitude that it did then. And I can tell you about one specific incident involving Christopher. Am I able to speak about this?
You can, whatever you're comfortable with, yes.
Thank you. So Christopher was at JFK. I went to pick him up early. The front receptionist wanted to distinguish Christopher from another Christopher who was a white Christopher. Christopher is darker. And so she said over the PA system, Chris, his mom is here, the dark Chris. It started years of being called porch monkey, nigger, spick, beanie. The list is endless. We worked with the district, and they implemented a program where the children actually got to play games and learn about the things you don't say. But it started with an adult who perhaps did not have racist motives, but needed to be sensitized. Chris is gone. Alex is still in the system. 2 years ago, Alex is in a class with a group of students, and the teacher thought it was okay to humiliate 4 students who had been put into the class who didn't speak English. That was a terrible situation for all the kids who witnessed it. Alex stood up for him, was sent to the dean, an investigation. That adult was fired. Adults need to be sensitized. It's not just the kids being told, don't say this, don't say that, the displays that are beautiful saying don't say this, don't say that. The adults have to be also taught that there's some things you don't say, that the children learn from you. And so that's what I'm saying. The kids have to learn, the adults have to learn. It's a system that has to be changed from the inside out. And that's my suggestion.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I also wanted to mention we are taking notes. Victor is making sure we get everything down. We are, as I said, we are live streaming right now.
My name is Joanne Riccone, and I'm not going to do a tit for tat here. I am people know me. I am I think a kind person. I volunteer rather than work. I give about 60 hours a week to my community, to all children. I think if we keep going back and forth about who says this inappropriately and who says that inappropriately, we'd be here all day. Not any one ethnicity, and I'm not going to say race because we're one race, many ethnicities. At one time or another, somebody has said something mean about somebody else. My mom is German. She comes from Germany. She was born under Hitler. When she came here, there were kids that didn't play with me, and they weren't allowed to play with me because the parents who were Jewish said, you're not going to play with that Nazi's kid. Now, what am I going to do? Am I going to hold it against them? Of course not. Kids say things about kids. My father lived in an African-American community in Jamaica, Queens. He was the Italian in the neighborhood. He got the tar beat out of him every day. Did my father ever hold it against those children or anyone else? No, he raised us to be good people and to be kind. No one can say that their group, if you want to call it, or ethnicity, never says anything unkind. So can we go on to something where we're talking about improving the district, making education fabulous for all, and building a community among these kids? Let's find projects where they can work together, intergrade, in the grade, K through 12, doing something amazing. Let's get beyond, because, you know, I can give you 50 examples of something that might have been inappropriate said to me, or my kids, or somebody else's kids, and that's not going to move us forward. I'm sorry if any child is mistreated, or people are made fun of or talked about because of who they are. It's ridiculous. It's a waste of time. And so I'm hoping let's talk about what good we can do, because there's so many ideas. Ms. Gosh knows me. She knows I homeschooled my kids. Because I was ill, I put my last one in. But while I homeschooled, I'm glad everyone had that experience while they were home during the pandemic. There's so many opportunities, so many ideas, so many wonderful things we can do. Let's do them, please.
Thank you, Joanne.
Good morning. My name is Rob Rosenhaus. I have one student going into 8th grade and another daughter who's going to be entering kindergarten this year, hopefully. So being that this is a public forum, I feel like folks are going to be responding to each other's comments here. So, ma'am, thank you for your comments. I just like to say, everybody's talking about, I think people are starting to understand this is systems level work that we have to do. And that's fantastic. Systems are made of people. So this kind of work starts from the inside out. So, ma'am, I appreciate your comments about everybody saying horrible things about one another at one point or whenever. But none of that makes it right. None of that makes it okay.
Absolutely.
And we should be calling everybody out.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
I know the focus is on anti-black racism right now, but that's where it starts. That's the foundational level of racism, especially in America. So if you start there, I'm sure everybody knows the expression, we help bring up our least and our most oppressed, and rising tides lift all boats, right? So if we're able to tell each other, call each other out when we do something that's not appropriate, that needs to be accepted. It's not done if we can understand that if it's done out of ignorance, or if it's done out of, ignorance is the only thing that I'm okay with personally, right? People don't know, and especially white people. We're gonna make a lot of mistakes as we navigate this path. We will. And we need to give ourselves grace, and we also need to back up and let people of color lead this. White people like to get in and be the leaders of everything. It's just what we do. We need to step back, and we need to listen to our families of color. We need to listen to all of them and take their advice. Listen to how they experience the world, because we as white people have no idea. I'm Jewish. I have the best camouflage in the world. I grew up experiencing extreme anti-Semitism when I lived in Brooklyn. Swastikas painted on my door coming home, Santa telling me that I can't get a gift because I'm Jewish, right? That's crazy. But I have great camouflage. I can blend in with the majority. People don't know. People of color wake up every day, and the first thing people see and react to is their skin color. They don't get to hide. They don't get a break from it. And that needs to be understood and accepted. And the only way change happens in systems is when people start to internalize that change themselves and make it part of their lives. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Dr. Bennell? Speak.
We had to set up the
I'm not-
microphones because they
Okay,
couldn't hear on the.
I'm not a mic guy, so I'm not
Standing
gonna
mic
go, I'm not gonna talk at the mic.
Okay.
I promise Joelle and
But,
Emily,
sir-
I love Emily, that I was just coming here just to be in attendance. I wasn't coming to really talk. But I know this is
So
not a
everybody can
debate.
hear online, would you mind using the mic?
Would you mind?
Okay, I know this is not a debate, but you said something, with all due respect, that struck home. You know, while you're talking about hurting feelings, and just like the gentleman said, you have the best camouflage. Probably while you're at home talking to your children about, you know, going to school, I'm at home talking to my children, trying to teach them, if they're driving, what they have to do if they get pulled over. I'm trying to teach my children, when you're going into a Macy's department store, how to be careful and how to watch your surroundings. And all this is because of the color of their skin. Not because I just want them to not offend someone, not hurt someone's feelings. Because when it comes to the color of your skin, you have no choice. There's no choice in the matter. And I think this is a forum for us to listen to each other, hear different perspectives. And I respect what you said, and I understand that. But our households, we're teaching our kids how to walk, how to interact with people, how not to stand out, how not to draw attention to them, how to ask for permission to drive cars, ask for permissions to step into department stores. So it goes beyond this, let's move on, we don't want to go for tit for tat, everyone's going to offend everyone, everyone's going to hurt feelings. It's beyond feelings, you know, and that's what we're here for, right? You know, to talk about the systemic issues that we face and try to figure out solutions. So with all due respect, I mean, I'm not trying to
I understand.
get back at you, but I'm just saying that let's listen. Let's hear each other's voices. And I'm not saying you're not, but let's
We do
just
the
listen.
same thing with our kids. My kid has already been pulled over 5 times. We're in Putnam County. Somebody's gonna get pulled over, and I get it. That you might, I understand.
It's not someone's gonna get. I've been pulled over in the last week. I've been pulled over twice, and I had a shirt and tie on. It's not a flippant. Oh.
No, I understand. I'm
Yeah.
not being
Okay.
flippant, believe me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, I didn't mean to.
that's
but
okay.
I didn't mean
That's
to.
Either.
All right, so just, I just want to let you know, we need the microphones because we did it the other night without the mics and you could not hear the things you wanted to put on the table. So just as a reminder, including to myself, that we want to hear everybody's thoughts and opinions and how can you move forward. We don't want to go back and forth. That would not be good. So just please make sure that you just put your feelings out there so we can hear you and we know what you're feeling. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Whitney Norcross. My son graduated from college already. My son is a high-functioning autistic young man, and his best friend is a high-functioning autistic black young man. And my fear for my son's best friend is that one day he'll be pulled over by the cops or stopped by a cop, and because he's autistic, will react in a way that the cops won't understand, and he'll be injured. And then, yesterday I read the transcript of Elijah McClain in Aurora, Colorado. And I don't know if you've read this or seen this online. He's a young black autistic man of color with anemia who was pulled over and beat up because somebody told him, said he's a young black man wearing a ski mask in Colorado. And he was killed. They injected him with ketamine. I don't understand why cops or EMTs are injecting people they have no medical history of with a drug. I have no idea. But part of his dying words were, I'm an introvert. I'm different. And it was not heard. And he did nothing. This man did nothing. And I go to sleep every night praying that this does not happen with Freddie, because this is the reality of life for people of color in America.
Thank you. And I just want to add, you know, our kids are counting on all of us to come together. So thank you again for being here and pouring your heart out.
Hi, my name is Monique Felder. I have a daughter she's going to be in 7th grade. And I'm mulatto. My mom is German, my dad is black. And I grew up in a mixed household. And I grew up in Frisco. And so I grew up around a lot of affluence, and I witnessed racism through Fox Lane. Like, we had it where at one point all black kids were told to stay home because we had little swastikas put into our lockers saying he worked at my school. We were told to stay home because we had little swastikas put into our lockers saying that we know where you are, and they had to investigate. I chose to move to Brewster because I said, even though I graduated from great high school, I graduated, I went to college, I have my degrees. I researched this school and I was like, it's small, yes, it has a low demographic of black people, but I'm hoping that my daughter doesn't ever go through the things that I went through at Fox Lane. I hope that with a small town mentality of how I grew up, even as a mulatto child, and being called an Oreo maybe from some, and then being told I wasn't black enough from others, I would not have to have that with my child here. Not saying that I don't understand or I don't get that. Yes, there's going to be racism. You can't hide it, you can't erase it. But you can teach people how to react to it, and you can stand up and say, that's not allowed. It's the biggest thing about racism is accountability. When people are not held accountable, they feel that they have the right to continue to do the action. And if enough people say, even if you're white, you're black, Asian, everybody gets discriminated against in some way, and you say it is not right, and you're not going to do it. I don't care if it's a black person discriminating against a white person, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to tell them, you're not right. This is not allowed, especially not in front of me. People don't know what other people have gone through. People don't know their background. When I go to Marshall's, and my daughter, she's dark skinned. I go to Marshall's with my mother, who's German, and they hear my mother scold my daughter. I've had people really get at my mother. I had black people say, hey, who shouted that? She's like, it's my grandchild. And then I had white people going, don't even waste your time. And she's like, what do you mean? This is my grandchild. Same delivery of information, but totally different by who said it was. It's not right. We can't, as a community. I came to this community, I own a house in this community. My tax dollars go in. It's not like I'm renting an apartment. My tax dollars go into this school. I see the budget we just approved. And I want to know that when my daughter comes to school, she is not feeling different. She's already part of a small demographic. But she sees going through the halls, she's different in color. But she's not, my daughter is straight A's. She's in the honor society. She's been that since young. We come from a house that education is first. And that is what's going to get you. I'm a prime example of it. I'm very proud of everything that I do. But I am also a prime example of I'm not going to allow people who just come out and show racism to feel that it's okay. I sent you many emails. My name's Bodie Fair. You probably remember it from that one instance because it was not right. And to know that she sat up here with you guys. I heard you on the call. I heard you on the call. I heard you and you on the call. And y'all said you did not agree with it. I saw it in your face, and I appreciate that. But one bad apple ruins the bunch. And you have to be able to talk to the bad apples. If they don't understand what they said and how it affects them, then you have to educate. And sometimes educating is not going to be the best thing. Sometimes extraction is. But we have to be strong enough to say when it's time for that extraction to happen. And that's it.
Thank you so much.
used to this, don't ever do this, but I feel like I have to. I'm a foster adopted parent. I've had kids in the district for 40 years, believe it or not. Just ended JFK for the first time in 40 years. I have ones right now that are going into 3rd, 4th, and 6th grade. I think one of the things that has to happen is that the school has to have some kind of curriculum of teaching children that families look different. Because my 2 girls, one's dark skinned, one's light skinned, they've been bullied on the bus because they tell people that they're siblings. They're not just adopted siblings, they're biological siblings also. The one is a lot darker than the other one, and one going into 6th is also dark skinned. I also have an Hispanic son that now has graduated college. I love the Brewster School. They are in my heart. They have done everything for my kids. My son in kindergarten, when he first went, came home crying because he was told a little boy that he thought was his friend came to school and said, because of what you look like, my mom said I'm not allowed to play with you or sit next to you. So, as a white person, I think people think they're able to say things to me that they wouldn't say to other people. And I've had a lot of things said to me. People look at my little girls, one's very light skinned, one's very dark skinned. I'll be somewhere and they'll look at the light skinned one and very nicely say, oh my gosh, she's beautiful. And then in another voice say, do you know she's black? and I think I have a different take because I'm a white person raising these children. And I'm not sure why, but white people think that they can say things to me, even though these are my children. I have biological children also. These children mean the same to me as all of my children. I've adopted 9 children. I have 3 biological children. And I've had 55 kids, foster kids over the years. Loved them all. They were all my kids. And I feel bad as to what's going on. My 2 girls came off the bus. I don't know how many times crying. One had her book bag ripped off and thrown in the back, called a liar, because they said, because of what they looked like, they could not be sisters. I'm not sure what to tell these girls, but I really think I fear for them being a year apart in school and being siblings. I really think these kids need to be taught. Kids that look like this can be in one family. You know, I think that's a problem with a lot of families. You don't teach your kids you can look different and still be a family member. I fear for my older son who's going into 6th grade. Honestly, he's dark skinned. His biological mother, all we know, all 3 of them have the same biological mother. We don't know what their races are because we have no idea what the other side is. But I fear for him because he's not even sure what he is besides Italian, and he tells me he's Italian and he's dark skinned because we can't make something up. But I've had a lot of situations, and I think a lot of times the parents are the worst. My husband at his job got told racist jokes continually. Having children at home that look like this, he just would have to walk away. Sometimes he would say something. I've never spoke up at a lot of the things that's happened in years with my kids. My little one, when she was born, I was actually in church, and somebody walked up and looked at her and said, oh my gosh, not another one. And like I said, I think because I'm white, they think they have the right to say more to me even. So I've had many things that I could stand up here and say, I'm not going to, because you get bored. But I think we need to change things. I'm not sure how, but I really think a lot of the adults need to also be educated. I'm not sure how we go about doing that. I try. I'm not good at speaking to people, but I think the adults need to be taught too. I even had a camp counselor tell my girls they were not siblings. And I had to go to the camp counselor and say, they are siblings. And so I think a lot of people need to be educated.
Welcome. We have another administrator here that just stepped in to listen as well. Ms. Sarah Knotts joined us. She's also Assistant Director of Personnel Services. Thank you, Sarah, for coming.
Hi, I'm Martina Genzai. A lot of what was said really resonated with me on so many different levels. One, I'm from a different state. I moved here about 12 years ago after I married my husband, and I grew up in a very ethnically diverse community, and so I that for me was never an issue because we were all so different. I think we just kind of accepted each other. And it wasn't until I really went to high school in a very affluent white neighborhood that I saw it. I'm 100% Albanian, and so I was the subject of a lot of discrimination just from my ethnic background. And I think first and foremost, it starts at home. And obviously, kids by nature question differences. They're like, well, why is this and why is that? And that's perfect, opportunity to educate them on how we're all unique. But, if it's a learned behavior and that hate and that discrimination is taking place at home, obviously that's what they're adopting. So I'm also an educator. I teach secondary English. And so I guess for me, I want to know in terms of the district, what are we putting in place in terms of the curriculum, the practices? So if those kids are not getting some of that education at home, how are we addressing this as a school? I personally do the Socratic seminar a lot in my class, and you wouldn't believe, I teach juniors, and so they're like, this is the first time I've actually heard my voice heard. But on the other end of that, me as a teacher addressing those very controversial topics is uncomfortable. Will I offend someone by the nature of the question, by the nature of the topic? And so I always hesitate, but I always kind of I love the challenge of having them to discuss it, because it's not until they really are able to voice their prejudice sometimes and notice that they have it and their biases and being able to work it out, that they're able to come to an understanding. I don't really intervene unless I have to if I find the discussion's getting heated, but it's about how I pose the question, what angles I give them to look at the topic, how they address each other. So I guess I want to know, what is the district doing in terms of those practices? I think not only to give support to those teachers who are willing to take that on, because again, every time I do it, I get a little nervous because you don't know what's going to come out of these kids' mouths. You really don't, and you know that on the other end of that, someone's going to be offended, and those are really hard conversations to have, but they're worthwhile because they take so much away from them. And if we don't give them the opportunity to really voice their opinions and thoughts and to really explore some of those biases that they have and some of that prejudice that they have, then they'll just become adults with those prejudices, And so I want to know kind of how's the district in terms of the curriculum, in terms of the practices, in terms of also giving support to the teachers to be able to tackle that as well. So.
Thank you so much. And at the very end, we're going to have a call to action. We're going to go over specifically what we're going to do. We're going to ask you to join us if you can on this journey. So we know your lives are really busy, but if you can, we really would love to have some people join us. So we'll talk about that towards the end.
Hi, I just wanted to say something because if I didn't, then I would have felt guilty that I didn't say anything. So we moved here about 3 years ago. I have young children. One is going into second grade and one is starting kindergarten in the fall. And when we made the decision to move to Brewster, it was because of the school, but it was also because we wanted our girls to experience a world that's a reality. And it's really important that we are in a community of diversity of all sorts, because that's the reality of the world, and that's part of educating our young people, is for them to see the world as it is. Our reality today is very disheartening. You travel 5 miles south from here, and you'll see graduation signs, and every single face is of one race. And we're still living in the world that's affected by redlining. And a place like Brewster is hopefully embracing change directly of what happened to people of color who were denied mortgages in my lifetime. I'm only 43, and this is still a reality. And so we have to understand those things. And one of the things that I think that I can do as a parent it is talk to my friends of color and say, hey, you're looking for a house, move to Brewster, because we need more brown and black people to occupy spaces here. I want my children to have classmates of diversity. So I just wanted to say that. And was it Martina? Thank you for your comment. I appreciate that a lot. And one of the things I would ask the administration to support teachers like Martina is to have this expectation that there's more teachers like Martina who is asking those hard questions and getting the students to have conversations and to lead their voices, so that it's not just this target on her back, like her class is controversial. It's actually they accept it. Why aren't more teachers asking the hard questions? And so we need to support teachers like her. Thank you.
Good morning. So just in response, I guess, to what both of you have said, I have had a couple teachers probably in my time here who have they've voiced their concerns about asking hard questions because, you know, some of them weren't tenured, some of them were newer teachers, and they don't know. Like, if they say something wrong, like, is that putting their career on the line? So I think it's important. Like, our teachers need to be able, I want my teachers to be able to ask us questions that are gonna make us think. I want my teachers to be able to start discussions in my classroom that are going to, you know, go somewhere productive. It's gonna really make us think about our bias and our prejudice. And I think most of you are parents, right? Yeah. I feel like I might be the only student here. But I would like to say then,
But you have a great voice.
yeah, I would like to say then, I guess, to all of you, it's like I said this on Thursday, it's about us. Like, I know a lot of you guys are here talking about what you're feeling, how you feel, but it's about your kids. It's about us. You need to be making sure that we are educated. I want myself to be educated. I want my peers to be educated. Because really, I think a lot of hatred stems from ignorance. So if you're not educated, you have so much more room to be hateful, I think. And I think that parents need to educate their kids. I think it absolutely starts at home. I think there's only so much that the school can do. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily matter what your teacher tells you, because you're still going to go home and your parents are still going to tell you what they think. A lot of people, like most people, I think, really, they inherit their parents' beliefs. So all of you here, I would like to, well, first of all, thank you for being here, because this is important. But please talk to your kids about this. Like, I know it's uncomfortable, it's kind of the whole point. Like, if it makes you uncomfortable, that probably means it's working. It's about asking the hard questions. It's about willing to be uncomfortable. You need to be willing to put yourself out there, put yourself on the line, and talk about the things that your kids need to know.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry for my lateness. I had a doctor's appointment this morning, but I had to be here, so I can't. But I was watching on Facebook. Some of you know me, Ms. Gosh knows me from a prior past life. My name is Jason Whitehead. I have a son who just graduated, and I have a smaller one going to the 8th grade. I think one of the general themes has been education and talking to your children. I think, and I agree with this young lady who said, it's at home. And I think part of it is at home, part of it is in school. But it's at home, and I think we need to hear more about everybody's story. Ms. Gosh and some other people in the school board kind of knows a little bit of my story. My story was, just in brief, I don't know, I can't trace back anybody past my grandma, my grandparents. Why? Because of slavery. Why? Because of slavery and because of Jim Crow. On the other side, who here and who online can trace back beyond their grandparents? My mom and my dad grew up as sharecroppers. I'm not trying to educate the board or educators, but most know that sharecropping was pretty much an extension of slavery. My mother grew up sharecropping in Fayetteville, North Carolina. She said, whoever doesn't know what sharecropping is, just look it up. My mom fled North Carolina when she was 18, 1963, and came to New York. How did she come to New York? Having no money. She answered an ad to take care of white families' kids in Queens, Kew Gardens, Queens. And she did that until the family's daughter called her the N-word, and she left. That was around 1965. My mom, she eventually was able to get jobs in hotels. She was a maid. She was a maid at Days Inn. She was a maid at the Barbizon Hotel down in Manhattan. So she finally was able to land a job as a civil servant at East Coast Community College, where she worked for the next 35 years until she retired. And she always had a thirst in education, so she wanted to go into Ostos because, as you all know, if you work for civil services in McCUNY, you get free tuition. Back then, tuition was not that bad anyway, but she got free tuition and she got her associate's degree. I remember her being at the table when I was little studying. So I'm really a first generation college student, but not really because my mom was able to get her associate's degree. So, in addition to those types of stories, I just think people here and people online need to hear more stories like that, because I think people think that because things are better today, that everybody's still on the same footing, right? But everybody here, or most people here and people online, benefited from their families in the past. The opportunities that their families in the past had, economic opportunities, right? My family wasn't able to buy a house and pass on that house to me. My family wasn't able to take advantage of all the educational opportunities. So a lot of you here, a lot of you online have benefited, whereas a lot of black families today have not. And so I just think we need to hear more about these stories. And a lot of the students coming up, they need to hear that too, because I don't want to tell you the things that some of the students in my son's own class have said to him. It's ignorant, not hateful, but ignorant statements that students have made. I shared one instance with the committee that I was on about certain words that my younger son was called, a few years ago. So it's just really, I don't know how much can be put into the curriculum, but more stories of how, and it's history. It's American history. It's not just black history. It's American history, and those stories aren't told. I used to work with somebody who went to school in North Carolina. Nothing. Like when it's just kind of glossed over. It's made to seem like things were better for Black Americans. Again, I asked my sons how much you learn. It seemed to me that most students today learn about Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and of course what they learn about Malcolm X is that he's racist. They don't learn about the good parts about Malcolm X, his transformation, and they learn about Rosa Parks. That's it. There's so much more. Black Americans have contributed so much more to this society, but kids today aren't learning about it. They're not learning about it in school, and they're not learning about it at home, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you. You can go up to the mic. Thank you. It just makes it easy for people that are listening at home. Thank you.
Hello. So I was late. I was told we would be meeting on the turf field, but the car looked empty. So it took a while because I wasn't sure where I was supposed to go. I'm also a parent, and I have 3 kids that are all going to be part of the school system. One of my daughters is at CD Star, my particular concern right now is that there's a lot of Spanish-speaking kids, and she was in a class with a lot of Spanish-speaking kids, it was a lot of them. I think it was like half the class that were just coming to the States and did not speak English yet. And I was told that everybody got kind of stuck to the same class because this was like the only teacher that could speak Spanish. And this teacher has now been let go. And I don't know the details, but I'm concerned because I feel like, speaking about hearing the stories, especially at the elementary grades, like, if the kids don't speak Spanish, they can't really interact much. And I feel like my daughter knows nothing about half of her classroom. And there's really no way to get at that unless the teacher speaks some Spanish and can sort of be the mediator. And so my concern is that maybe the schools need to be looking more towards people that are at least proficient enough in Spanish so that they can help bridge that gap. And I wish I was better at Spanish. I'm not. But I think, a school is a setting where that's what's sort of expected. And I'm very concerned that this teacher was let go because I think she was clearly fulfilling a really important role if everybody put the Spanish-speaking kids in her class. And yeah, I would like to see, from an organizational standpoint, I would like to have more emphasis put on, providing Spanish speakers specifically to make sure that these kids can interact and can learn from each other because they are young and they would get a lot out of it. But right now, the way it seems to be treated is, well, there's the Spanish speakers and we can't understand them, so oh well. And I think that's a shame, and it's on the schools to fix that. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. My name is Joelle. I've been very active, so I'm sure a lot of you know me. I'm not going to go on about the whole thing I said last time, but I do want to say, first of all, I don't have a story. I'm white. I do not have one, but I do have several stories of others that I'd like to share. My neighbor, I met for the first time at McDonald's, a black family. They told me, you never see us because we keep to ourselves. They told me, our son, when he would go trick-or-treating, people wouldn't answer the door for them. They keep their doors closed. They shut off their lights. That's never happened to me, ever in my life. I've never been pulled over by the police. My husband's never been pulled over by the police. My stepson is 19 years old. He speeds. He's white. He's never been pulled over. I never have to tell him, be careful when you go out the door. I never have to worry, okay? Now, I also want to tell you about my years of volunteering in the school district. So first of all, there are different races. So to say there aren't, that's ignorant. So I will forgive that. However, I'm here to tell you there are different races. When I first started social work school, about 5 years ago, I stood up in front of my classroom and I said, I'm sorry, aren't we all a part of the one race, the human race? And how ignorant was I at that time? I was so ignorant. But now my eyes have been opened, okay? My experience is different than Corey Hart's experience. I don't have to tell my children to be careful. But I sat in that classroom when I was volunteering. I speak broken Spanish, trying to help this little girl. The teacher said to me, Joelle, don't bother. She has to learn our language. It's not our language, okay? English is not the first language. It's wrong to say that they need to assimilate. They need to figure it out for themselves. We need to have, and I agree, thank you for saying, we need to have a much more diverse teaching staff. We need to have people for people of color to look up to. The gentleman last time said, I'm sorry, I'm touching the mic. I just realized I'm trying to turn it down.
It's okay.
The gentleman last time said, we only hear about slavery and all of the hardships, but my children don't have anyone to look up to. We need to have black teachers, more Hispanic teachers. We need to have the teachers that are here to be taught. Another teacher said to me when I was volunteering, because she felt so freely to speak in front of me because I'm white, she said, black people smell. That's what she said to me, I swear to God, and I didn't do anything, and I am so sorry. here, I'm shaking because I'm like so angry. I didn't do anything, and for that I am sorry. But I know now, and we as parents need to teach our children to speak up. I teach my children that every day, and I'm risking something. My son tells people when they say, "You're so gay," to tell them, "Don't say that, that's wrong." Has he lost friends? Absolutely. My daughter got into a fight with someone in school because someone in her class was drawing a wall during the election saying, "This is what's gonna happen to all of our kids. They're gonna be put behind that wall." That teacher did nothing, okay? My daughter cried, went home, and that's what's still going on. So to say, let's just move on and let's just do something, please, please, let's keep on talking about it. Share your stories. Let's give everyone a chance. So I ask, please, just consider when you're hiring teachers and also do a better job educating them. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say I really appreciate how everybody is being so respectful to each other, and also you're talking in generalities. We're talking about staff. I really appreciate that, and because I hadn't mentioned it. Sir.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Sorry, I didn't mean to touch the mic either. But my name is Scott Rhodes. I've been in the community for a long time. Many of you know me. Many of you are friends. I have 3 children in the school. My son who sits right here, who's going to be 17 very shortly. I have a daughter who was classified at 18 months of age as autistic, so black and autistic. I also have another daughter who's autistic that's bussed out of the system or bussed out of the district to another school, black and autistic. When my kids were younger, my son was told flat out the N-word to his face. My other daughter was told that she was hated because she has nappy hair. My youngest daughter, who's autistic, was told that we were told that we should treat her like a dog because she was having accidents on the bus on the way to school. So we should train her like a dog. These things are unacceptable in our community. We're much better than that. All of us here have had some interaction with one another at some point in our lives. Again, we talk about the stories. That's why I share my story. There's a lot more to it, and there's a lot more stories that I can share, and I'm sure we all can. But that's going to be the core of what's going to happen here, is sharing our stories, understanding each other, and then putting a plan into action where we can all come together. I'm concerned. Every day. My son just got his license back in March, and I know Corey mentioned it, there's a couple other folks that mentioned it. I'm having a totally different conversation than a white parent. Most white parents are saying, okay, I don't want you to speed, be careful, don't crash the car, all that. My conversation with my son when he first got his license is, make sure you keep 2 hands on the wheel, make sure you have your registration, your license, and your insurance card all available just in case you get pulled over. He went out the other night, I was worried that he's gonna make it home safely. I don't sleep until he gets home at night. I'm a heavy sleeper, I usually go to sleep and I'm good. But now that he's driving, same thing with my daughter. She's gonna get her license in September. I'm scared for her. Folks, we encounter a lot different things than most white people do in this neighborhood. And I'm just putting it out there. It's different for us. It's unfortunate. When my son goes to a party and it's a primarily white party, I say, hey, listen, who else is going with you? Because if something happens, I want to make sure that at least he has somebody that has his back. He said, Dad, my friends have my back, I'm good. Which is good to hear, it's encouraging. So again, I get along with a lot of people here, and a lot of you know me. I've coached football in this community for a lot of years. I've coached basketball in this community for a lot of years. I had these 2 young ladies in school years ago. It's very, very scary for me when my first day of my son, the first day of my son's high school career, he's already nervous and anxious about being a 9th grader in high school, but when he opens up his textbook and it says KKK, Trump 2016, that's an issue. How does someone feel if they can actually write that in a textbook and get away with it and feel comfortable doing it? We're going back to learned behavior, right? This happens in the home. We gotta educate our kids. I tell my son all the time, treat people the way you wanna be treated. Be nice, Be nice to people. I don't care about the color of their skin. I don't care about their ethnicity. I don't care about where they come from. You treat everybody the same way you want to be treated. And a lot of you can attest to that because that's how I treat my friends. So my point, and what I implore for the board and administration is, there's three things that I look at. One is academics. What are we going to do, to Jason Whitehead's point, to start changing the curriculum so that we're not just teaching certain things, right? We're taking a broader spectrum so everyone can learn about each other. Secondly, from an athletic standpoint, I'm a big athletic guy, what are we doing to help children of color advance outside of high school? I hear a lot about what the coaches are doing for certain students and getting them into school, and they're going D1 or they got an offer here. What are we doing for children of color? And then the last piece of this is from a community standpoint. How are we going to bridge that gap between the community and the school system? We started a few years ago with a task force. It started in one direction. There wasn't really a clear, defined definition of what we were really looking to accomplish in the mission. It kind of went by the wayside. I ask that we can continue to do that. Come together again and really start to figure out why this is happening, number one. And number two, how we can fix it. And number three, share our stories. Because that's where it's going to start. And then after we do that, then we can put a plan into action and start executing on it. But that's all I have to say, and thank you.
Your comments, I had some thoughts in mind, and then perfect segue. Thank you. So I was wondering, as we embark on this work, because this is probably some of the most important work we can engage in, your comment about the task force not having, or seemingly not having a shared mission, vision, I'm curious, is the board developing those mission, vision statements? Is it going to be open to the community for discussion so that the community can have ownership over that? Are there working definitions you're using for racism, equity, inclusion, structural racism, institutional racism, individual racism? Like, these conversations, everybody comes to these conversations with these preconceived notions of what these words mean. And it's going to cause confusion if we're not using some kind of shared language around this. And I'm hearing all these different kind of ideas, and it's really clear to me that we don't have a shared language about what this is about. And I think moving forward, it would be really helpful if and I don't know where it can come from. I think the best way is through community engagement, finding out what the community thinks about these, but a starting point maybe, and this is just a suggestion, if the board can put together a list of terms, how you guys are operationalizing them, what they mean for you, so that when we have conversations, we can have that shared experience and all be on the same page. These conversations get really complicated and difficult. So I can't stress that enough, that shared mission, vision, and language are some of the most important work. And this is collaborative work. That's what we're trying to do here. And those are the three things that you need to do when you form a collaborative. Have a shared mission, vision, and shared language. So you all know what you're trying to accomplish. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And what you just said is extremely important. And I just want to pause for a moment. And I want to, Sonia would like to add something.
So, thank you. And thank you for everyone who is, sorry. Thank you, and thank you for the many suggestions that are coming up. And I was on that task force, started off on that, and I agree. We failed in establishing that criteria, and I think, well, first, that was really the intention behind holding these forums, to start somewhere. We need to start somewhere. And this is a way for us to just come together and sharing ideas and absolutely build on that and create productive ways to go forward and address all these issues and concerns. And so I know that they'll talk at the end about some of that direction, but absolutely. And it's a constant thing on my mind. It's been on my mind for years. And that community engagement piece has always been an issue. People do come out when things are crazy. And then things quiet down again, and someone else will be taking care of that. But the conversation does need to continue, and it's difficult at times to get the community engaged. So I'm hopeful that with this process that we've started here, that the community will continue to stay engaged, and there will be many opportunities for committees to be on, and perhaps another task force. But what I can ask is that you share with your neighbors and your friends to participate, because I think a lot of time it falls on what's the board going to do, and the board at times is limited by education law. We have to work within certain parameters, but as parents, we included, have much more power and influence on the system. And so I'm hopeful that as we implement the different things that we will do in the future, the community will come out and stay committed to that work, because we'd like to see it go forward in the best way we can possibly address all these issues that come up. So I wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good morning. I really want to say that I'm really happy to see the people that actually showed up this morning, because I have a feeling that the people that showed up this morning are not the people that we really need to convince. Okay? A couple of years ago, the high school had a meeting for the community about some of the racial issues that we're having. And I don't have any children in the school system here in the district, but I view all the kids, especially some of the football players, as all of my kids, because I've gotten a chance to actually meet, coach them, engage with them. I sat in that auditorium, and contrary to what's happening here, people had a chance to actually share their personal experiences to try to make something better. And they were suppressed and denied that opportunity. And I looked around at the end, because it was a 10 or 12 person panel that was brought up to speak to everyone. And I remember a parent in the crowd saying, "We didn't come here for you to lecture to us. We want to let you know what is happening with our kids in the community and with us as parents." Okay? It brings me also to mention that I was a police officer, former police officer in New York City, in the Bronx. And culturally, the police department needs to change also, right? And I think also culturally, education needs to change, and that's why we're here. One incident that I never forget vividly in my mind is prior to me even moving here, I came up to see my current, well, at the time she was my girlfriend, now my fiance. We're coming from Connecticut on Old Route 6. And I'm coming over, and it just so happened it was St. Patrick's Day. And we're actually heading to a commercial establishment that night, a bar restaurant that night. And I got pulled over. At this time, I came out of the academy, police academy, maybe a year, 2 years at this point. And they pulled over, and the officer, when I rolled down my windows, because the first thing I do is to make sure I roll down my windows, take my keys out the car, put them on top. I want to bring all the windows down, make everyone feel safe. Approaches the door, and she looks over. Just so happened that my fiance is a white female, and says, "Honey, are you okay?" I still didn't say anything. I said, "Okay, let's just see where this is gonna go." So finally, I said, "You know what? From my training, I'm gonna identify myself so she knows who she's dealing with." She looked at my ID, threw it back at me, and got into the cruiser. That was it. Okay? And I'm saying to myself, in my worst day in the South Bronx, in the summer, hot and sweaty, running from job to job, I still never dealt with people this way. So it's definitely a systemic issue that we're dealing with here. You know, but once again, the educators that are here, I'm so happy to see you, especially the ones that work in the schools. I would hope there are more coaches that showed up, because you'll be surprised, even a week ago, I get a text from one of the kids that I coach and says, "Hey coach, you have any kids?" I said, "Not biologically, all you guys are my kids." He goes, "Well, happy Father's Day." I said, "Thank you, I appreciate that." You know, guys, it's just, you guys, we're on to something here. I just hope we continue the course, stay the course, because once again, the things that are taught at home, it starts to show itself up here in the schools. It shows itself up on the playing fields. You know, being that I have family in blue who at times are not able to come to meetings and things of that nature, I try to make myself available to come to these meetings. And one of the issues that happened a couple of years ago, there was a young child, I think she was in Henry Wells at the time. She was riding the bus, and her mother could not understand why is it that she kept on putting a hood on her head every time she went out. She always had some big hair garment over her head. And she said, "Ron, I come to find out that while she's on the bus, her hair is being pulled." So I said, "Okay, did you approach the school? Did you speak to the teacher? Did you speak to anybody about it?" She said, "Yes, I spoke to them, but she says it keeps going on. It just keeps happening." So 2 weeks later, I'm still hearing about hair being pulled. I'm like, okay, I have to come down and have a word. And I had a word, and I just told him, I said, "Listen, there has to be some kind of education that has to happen with the kids at a very early age, because I can't see how this is being acceptable. What happened if that child in question turned around and now punched, kicked? Now we have a bigger issue that might have overshadowed the issue that started everything." So, you guys, we're on the right track. Continue to do the work. Whatever you need. As a coach here, I'm privileged to coach here at Brewster. And I'm going to continue my work as best as I can with the kids that I engage with through the football vehicle. But you guys just, your hearts are in the right place. You know, your hearts are in the right place. And that's all we really need to get this done. All right? Thank you.
I just want to pick up on what Superintendent said about we all got to be involved.
Speak into the mic, Jay.
I want to pick up on what the superintendent said and what Ron said about we all have to be involved. More of the citizens of this county this area has to come out, but also we need more stakeholders. I'm on County Executive Latimer's Police Reform Committee down in Westchester, and on that committee we have everyone. We have prosecutors, we have defense attorneys, we have law enforcement. So the same way with this, we need somebody to come out from the state senator's office. We need somebody to come out from County Executive Mary Ann Odell's office. We need more than just the school and the citizens of this area. We need more people to take advantage of it. I'm sure County Executive Odell is going to put together her own police reform because she has to, according to Governor Cuomo's executive order. It has to have more stakeholders. Every stakeholder has to be involved.
I want to mention also we have someone here from Senator Harkin's office who is here. So thank you for being here. And also I want to mention I have a key communicator committee with stakeholders that takes place throughout the school year. If anybody's interested, we look for people that are, that are heads of different, the Chamber of Commerce, the Rotary. If you have your organization, you want to be part of the key communicators, let me know.
I'm Dawn Ruggiero. I have 2 boys in the district. They're both in CD Star, and I was a member of the task force that was created several years ago, which kind of did fall by the wayside, so I do commend you for restarting this conversation. One thing that was successful that the task force did create was a community event to raise awareness about different cultures in this community. I truly believe that intolerance is taught and learned, and as a mother of young children, I do believe as a community and district, it's our responsibility to instill in our youngest children an understanding and awareness of other cultures. So I would encourage the district to keep going and create programs that help collaborate with the youngest students and the oldest students in this district. We had a little carnival where high school students were working with elementary school students, and they were learning about different communities and cultures, and it was a wonderful collaboration of all the students in our district, and it got a lot of people out and about, and I made new friends through that event. So I would encourage us to keep engaging in this and have a working component between the community, the high school, and the youngest students in the district. Thank you.
Hi everyone. My name is Dignora Laporte. I have 1 child here now and 1 entering. So I kind of took some notes because I want to make sure that I address some of the points here. I think the student was the one that said that when you're uncomfortable, it means that it's working, and that is absolutely correct. You have to be in a place of uncomfort in order to see and experience growth, both as a person and as a community. So we should really capitalize on this for the betterment of us all. Something about language was mentioned. For language acquisition to actually take place, for someone to actually have mastery in language, it takes 3 to 5 years for that to actually happen. I speak from experience. I'm from Puerto Rico. I came here when I was 8 years old. Most people won't know that Spanish was actually my first language. It comes up through discourse, so through dialogue. My sister, who was older, can really turn her brain into English and Spanish immediately. My brother, who's younger, it takes a little while. For him, he understands it absolutely, but when it comes to that competence in speaking, it takes some time. So we definitely have to be patient, because it takes time. And when puberty hits, that's when the brain automatically changes, and it's harder for kids to actually learn the language. I want to address a false assumption that kids don't know how to interact with one another. They absolutely do. As a kid, I didn't know a lick of English, and yet I still made friends. My cousin who was here in the States, we interacted just as good, and probably was better for us to not have adult intervention, although sometimes that's actually needed. So, I think teachers do have to be part of the conversation in order to kind of help create those environments for kids to learn and explore language with one another. Sorry. To the lady that said, I don't have a story, you do have a story. You became part of your neighbor's story. And it's up to all of us to be able to engage in that conversation with one another. You are now part of his story. Every white person has a story. Every black person has a story. It is different, but we need to be able to open up our ears, right? And really listen to what that story is. So you are part of the conversation. You brought his story or their story here to us. And now it's a matter of us really engaging, right? What can we do? What actions can we take? so that the lights are turned on, so that the doors are open, so that we can create a better environment for them all, for us all. For those that are not aware, social emotional learning is really at the forefront of this type of work. There's 5 competencies, so basically all our young children really have to learn these things. And I want all the adults to really think about themselves. You right now, think about this right now. How are you showcasing your own self-awareness? How are you showing your social responsibility? You're all here. That shows that you want to be engaged in the conversation. Our self-management skills, right? How we interact with one another. How we're able to kind of step back, really self-analyze. Our relationship skills. How we talk to one another. How we interact with each other in a community, right? And the last one is that responsible decision making. So how are we, again, taking on those decisions that impact every one of us? There is also a push for culturally relevant education, and that really is about looking at the content that teachers are providing to address the diverse needs of all our students. I have to be honest that during this remote learning, the book that was chosen for my child to read, or that was being read to him by the teacher, was not the best. So as an adult, as an educator, I said, you know what, I'm not gonna do this. It wasn't relevant enough for what is happening now. So it lacked that responsible, it wasn't responsible. It didn't respond to the immediate needs of what was happening. I saw it as a missed opportunity to engage in a conversation that could have been so much richer, knowing what is happening in our current environment. That could have been an opportunity to really engage in a dialogue. Thank you to the English teacher who's encouraging those conversations with her kids. That's what it should be. Language and text have to really be looked at to be able to, get that sense of you learn through stories. You learn through stories. You learn by creating that empathy and being able to really see what others are experiencing. So, one last thing. And the gentleman here mentioned about establishing a common language. I think that is absolutely necessary. When I worked in the city as a teacher, we had an incident where an Asian kid was beat up completely, like to the pulp, where he was probably even hospitalized. Due to that, the school actually the Department of Education brought in the Anti-Defamation League. They are an organization that works with others to be able to help establish that common language, not just with the teachers, but with students as well. I think that would be, as a recommendation, just to, again, look at all the other places. I know that they're in the forefront of this work. So I absolutely encourage the board and the district to really look into that. And for all those that are really interested in continuing to educate yourselves, there is a book called White Fragility. If you haven't read it, absolutely pick it up, read it. Although my skin might not look like it, I am a person of color. Black blood runs in me, and I know that, and I acknowledge that. So read it, even if you are a person of color, because it absolutely helps in educating ourselves, in engaging in this type of conversation. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Can you hear me? I feel like I'm not being heard.
just want to say thank you again to the board for holding this forum, as well as district leadership. I think it's important that all the voices are heard. I did speak the other night, and I'm not going to reiterate what I said, but for those who do not know my story, my daughter at 2 years old was called the cutest little wetback. So for me, things are personal, and again, I won't elaborate on that, but that's the context in which I come up here. When I got home the other night, my daughter, who is going into 7th grade, does understand what is happening. To what level, she knows the bits and pieces of what's occurring in the country. She knows what has happened here in Brewster, that there was someone in a position of authority who did something bad and racist. And she came home, when I came home, she said, "How was the meeting?" And my daughter is, she's also on the spectrum. So she can be very direct and sometimes very concrete. She said, "Did you talk about the N-word?" And I thought, okay, here comes, educator and me came out, teachable moment. I said, "Emery, what N-word?" And she said, "Can I say it?" I said, "I want you to say it because it'll be the first and last time that you say it." She said, "Okay, nigger." And I didn't realize my son was kind of on the other side of the room. He's 7 years old, just finished JFK, 2nd grade, and he was listening. And he came over and became part of the conversation, and I said, "Okay, guys, this is the word, this is what it means, this is why you don't say it. It's hurtful, it's offensive, there's a history to it." And I tried to give them the age-appropriate explanation for each of them. With my daughter, I had to be very blunt and say, you don't say it because number one, it's wrong, number two, you're gonna get in a lot of trouble. So for her, I had to really drive home that point. My son said, and Dr. Zamperlin, you know Andrew, he's sweet, he's nice, he's overall a really good kid. He said, "Mom, I was on the bus," and this was before COVID hit, obviously. I was on the bus and little Johnny next to me, someone from his class, told me, "Andrew, say the word nigger, say it." My son did. And he said, and he looked at me and he said, "But I didn't know what it meant, Mom. I didn't know what it meant. Like, am I in trouble now?" And I said, "You're not in trouble now." We talked about it some more. But that is the point. It made me stop and think. Another 7-year-old on the JFK bus, kindergarten through 2nd grade, knows the word nigger. So you have to say, okay, did he see it on social media? Did he hear it on the radio? Did he hear it on TV? Did he hear it from an older sibling? Or even a much scarier thought, did he hear it from a parent at home? So I hear what everyone is saying, that it starts at home. It does, but we don't know what's starting at home. Let's be kind of honest about that. I know the plan that Dr. Gosh had presented on Thursday night, and I'm aware a little bit of what that the work that's going to be done. There are possibly people here who are waiting to question it, to pick it apart, to say, well, I don't want my children indoctrinated. This is too liberal, too progressive for me. And the board will get those emails. And when a teacher does a lesson, let's say on, let's have a discussion about systemic racism, police brutality, or legal system, the principals are going to hear it first. So I implore the board, district leadership, back the principals, back the teachers when these tough discussions happen, because it will get uncomfortable, it will be hard, you're going to hear from people that don't like it, you will, and they're waiting for a moment, you know it, and you know already what they're going to say. To the people here that have said, get more involved, I would encourage you as a community to keep this momentum going. This is the right direction. It is the right thing to do. It's not about an agenda. It's not political. This is the right thing to do for kids. And I would encourage people to get a seat at the table. There are 5 board members here. It is a shame the 6th one is not. I have no personal problem with this individual, but the 6th person is not here. Was not here for the last forum, was not here for the past few board meetings. That is unconscionable because that person represents all of our kids, my kids included. Get involved. Petitions come out in April for the board, get involved. Subcommittees are being informed for this discussion, this equity forum, get involved. Please continue to support the board because I believe, having worked with most of them, their hearts are so in this.
I think Dr. Banlow, Dr. Gosh, Dr. Harrington, Mr. Carlson, the principals, I think they are 100% doubling down on this work. Support them when people start complaining. They need to hear from this group. Thank you.
I also want to recognize, we have two other staff members I want to recognize being here. Mrs. Lauren Cole, she is our assistant principal at the high school, and also Dr. Zamberlin on the far end, JFK principal. Thanks for being here.
I'm gonna stand up here because that works, I think.
It's Emily, right?
Yeah.
Mention your name so we all get to know each other.
Yes, hi, Emily. I spoke a little bit earlier. I spoke on Thursday. I've been speaking a lot. Okay, so I spoke a little bit about this on Thursday. I didn't necessarily want to reiterate because no one needs to hear my whole spiel over again. But slurs, not just the N-word, but queerphobic slurs, just like, there's a lot of that in our school system. There's a lot of that in the hallways. There's a lot of that social media, in classrooms even. And, as much as, I'm sorry, you said Christine? Is that your name? Yeah.
Kristen.
Kristen, okay. Okay, so you told your daughter you can't say that because you're going to get in trouble, which is the right thing to say. But from personal experience, from hearing my peers use slurs all the time, none of them actually get in trouble. That doesn't actually happen. And I'm not saying I know exactly what the right thing is to do. Like, how do you talk to a student who says the N-word? How do you say, you can't say that, but then how do you say why? What do you do? Do you punish them? I don't know. I'm not an educator. I'm not an administrator, so me personally, I can't give any kind of this is what you need to do about this. But something needs to be done about that. Because these kids are throwing around these words that they don't understand. They are hurting people. And it's so uncomfortable to hear. It's gross. It's gross. Why? Why do you feel the need? We need to teach kids, it can't be acceptable. I have seen teachers in the hallway, kids will walk through the hallway yelling the N-word, and the teacher will look at them and just walk away, just ignore it. I don't know what they need to do in that situation because I am not the teacher, but they need to do something. Because every time you let that go, you are being complicit, you are ignoring it, that is a very privileged move. You are being privileged when you don't acknowledge and you don't say to this kid, you can't do that. That is you exercising your privilege, not feeling like you need to do anything about it because it doesn't apply to you. Because that word has never been used against you. So that is just something that I want everyone to keep in mind, that we need to kind of double down on language, on offensive language, because that's a really big deal right now.
Hi, I'm actually going to read a statement for a Spanish-speaking mother. I'm just going to translate it into English. My name is Esperanza, and I have a child in JFK. I immigrated from Guatemala to the United States to have a better future for my family and myself. I give thanks for the opportunity to be here. This is a great country and with great opportunity, and I have met people with very big hearts here. Leading with love has helped me come here, and many people who are strangers have showed me and my family kindness. I hope that we can lead with love in the community and we can give our kids what they need in order to be successful. I ask that we seek the social emotional support for our students who may have been experiencing traumatic things such as racism or a traumatic experience getting here. I send a very big hug to everyone here for giving me the opportunity to speak in this space. Thank you.
I just wanted to say one more thing. Just listening to everyone reiterating the stories, And obviously I'm in the classroom, so in the high school setting, so I get to see this firsthand. And so many kids and students are so unaware of their story. They don't know where they've come from. They don't know what generation they are. They don't know why their ancestors came here, what type of persecution perhaps they were escaping from. And to me, it saddens. I'm a first generation, and I have an appreciation for the struggle that it took my parents to make it here. And also for my grandparents, who lived under a communist dictatorship and were imprisoned. And, I can go on about the terrible things that they suffered under. And it's humbled me to appreciate so much of what I'm offered here. And also to really, I think, respect other people and their struggle. And I think you can find a lot of common ground there. So I would encourage you, please talk to your kids, know your history. So when you say there's no story, there's a story there. And so many of them are unaware of that story, and I think because the parents are unaware of that story. When I ask them about their history, some of them say, I have no idea. So have those conversations with your kids. Make time to really sit down and to know that, so they can have that appreciation, so they can have that empathy, that compassion. Because some of them are really sad when I give them assignments like that, and they have nothing to say. And now they have to dig, but unfortunately sometimes those people who, maybe came here or have that stories have been long past, and so those stories are now lost. And so just so much of what you said resonated, and how much people learn from that. I have students who come from Venezuela, and what I learned and what my students learn from him sharing what he went through. I mean, it's invaluable. It's like nothing I could have constructed out of my own lesson. So, as an educator, please, find those opportunities for kids to share that multiculturalism, of all ethnic backgrounds, so that they have that understanding, so they have that appreciation.
My name is Anthony Santiago. I've been a resident of Brewster for about 10 to 12 years. I'm Puerto Rican, grew up, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. And I don't have a significant story, but my story kind of resonates with being in situations where I've been pulled over by police. Getting off at 22, I got pulled over 3 times in 3 years for random reasons. But currently, I'm an administrator at a community college in Connecticut, and I can tell you firsthand that although I'm not in the classroom, but as an administrator, the children and the students that are going into the community colleges are not prepared. They're not prepared academically. History is not being taught the way it should be taught. They're learning American history, but they're not learning enough about American history. They only touch upon certain topics regarding civil rights, Jim Crow, segregation, etc., etc. So I think with this opportunity that's taking place now in Brewster, unfortunately it took something negative to turn into something positive. And as a parent of 2 small children, small, my daughter's almost 20, but one is going into the high school and another one is going into 5th grade, what this pandemic taught us, it gave us the opportunities to have dinner at the same time every night as a family. And we have those conversations. And at the community college, we have conversations called courageous conversations, where topics such as racism and topics about, white privilege or segregation and what took place, in Puerto Rico back in the 20s and 30s, and sugarcane, and you name it, sharecropping, similar stories to what we were earlier. These are conversations that I'm having with my children now. And I say this because the other night, my son was on, he was playing his game with a couple of his friends online, and one of the children said the N-word. And I heard him say, "What did you say?" And my son is only 10 years old. He has no idea what the word means. So when we sat down at the dinner table, that was an opportunity for me, as a Hispanic man who grew up in Brooklyn, who has used the word. And I'll be very honest with you, I've used the word, I've used it freely. I've used it reciting rap lyrics, reciting music lyrics, and interacting with my friends. And do I apologize for it? No, because as I was growing up, that was just what we were used to. I was a product of my environment, and that's what we did in our environment. But now, going through going through education and understanding how hurtful the word is, and how hurtful the word spick is, wetback, or whatever these derogatory terms are. We have a unique opportunity as parents and as educators to teach our children what's right and what is wrong. We also have an opportunity to give our children a chance to understand the history that has been laid before them. So, just let me finish what happened at the dinner table. Having that conversation with him about the N-word, his eyes brightened up because he had no idea how hurtful the word is. So now whenever that word pops up in his games with his friends or whatever the case is, he knows right away, hey, you can't say that word, we can't play. And the word stops. So it's a matter of calling attention to it, it's a matter of nipping it in the bud, and it's a matter of stepping up when we have to step up. So I'm glad for this opportunity. I appreciate having this opportunity for all of us to kind of hear each other's stories and hear the direction that the school is taking, and I'm very proud of that. But I have to be honest and say that I'm complicit by staying behind the lines for so many years and not having the chance to be a part of something. So I promise you, as a parent, as a taxpayer, that I will do everything that I can to be a part of whatever committee there is to get this community moved up. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Chris. I have two graduates of the Brewster school system from K through 12, and one son is going to be a senior this year. I think that, and to echo a little bit of what the rest. Oh, good. If you want to smack me in the back of the head, no, I appreciate it. But I think that one of the key things about school and education is I view it, and I am an educator, I view it as a moral intellectual endeavor. And I always start with the word moral. Because there is a difference between what's right and what's wrong. We do it every day in our schools. That's right, that's wrong. There's a code of conduct. All of these different situations where we do make decisions about what's right and what's wrong. And we teach kids about what's right and what's wrong. And I think that as an educator, I firmly believe in the promise of public education. Right? That's what's brought and been a great equalizer in our communities across the country. And I've been sitting here listening to some really close friends, speak about their experiences which I've actually had dialogue with some of them. And I think when we enter this work, it's really important for us to remember that it's not about me being right or wrong. It's about listening, truly listening, and understanding other people's experiences. Because my experiences are my journey, my story is not invalid. No one else's is either. But I think it's really important, this concept of not being complicit and understanding the work, and I'm so happy the school district is going to be working with NYU, Metro Center, this concept of dismantling inequity that you see in your sphere of influence. That might just be with your neighbor, talking over the fence. It might be by truly participating in this work. And I think as a community, we can look at the world and say, this is how are we going to change this? It's almost like time immemorial, right? Prejudice, racism, religious prejudice, persecution, whatever it might be. I think that this community really has an opportunity here. It's great to see everybody, and I think it's hard work. It's hard work, and it's not a committee. It's not a year. It's not 2 years. It's not 5 years. It's a lifetime's worth of work. And most importantly, I'm 52 years old. I've been, nurtured in whatever environments I've been nurtured in, whether it's from my family, my career, my friends, my neighborhood. But it's about our children, right? It really is about our children, about our children's friends, about the community we want. So I really do applaud the board and the superintendent, the administration for tackling this work. But I also challenge all of us, to really continue it and to build upon it, because it truly is a community, and schools are reflective of the community they serve. I think that's really, really important for us to remember. You go to different school systems across the country, they behave very differently. Cultural norms are very different, right? What is this community and this community that this district serves, because the district and the education, the opportunities should be reflective of that. So I just want to say, thank you to the board for this. Terrible topic, but it's been going on. You talk about right 1609, all right, as far as black enslavement. But we talk about religious prejudice, persecution, gender bias, all of these things that are all part of this work. So I just want to say thank you, and any assistance you need, please don't hesitate to call. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is John Clark. I'm the principal of Wells Middle School, and I just wanted to say thank you all of you who came out here today. I didn't plan on speaking. A lot of times the administrators tend to listen, and I think that's very important that we do listen, but I felt compelled to say something here today. I grew up in I live in Poughkeepsie. That's where I grew up. I grew up next to a middle school. I never dreamed of becoming a middle school principal. Somehow I ended up there. Maybe it was because I lived next door to a middle school. I don't know. But it was right on the border of the city of Poughkeepsie and the town of Poughkeepsie. So it was a racially mixed neighborhood. And it's just my experience, and I feel as a leader in this community, it's important to see where our lens comes from in our middle school. My next door neighbor was Mr. Rubin. Mr. Rubin was a Jamaican immigrant. He was the hardest working man I ever met. He would come to our house. He would plow our driveway. My dad was always busy. I had 5 brothers and sisters, and he would just be there looking out for our family all the time. And he passed away a couple years ago. Sorry if I seem nervous. This is kind of emotional for me. But I wrote a poem on his behalf when he died. I think I woke up in the middle of the night. I was an English teacher here for a lot of years. If you don't know that, I taught many of your kids. The street I grew up on was called Friendly Lane. The poem was called Friendly Lane. America's true melting pot, where we would weave ourselves together, where we would meet, where we would melt together in childhood, a kickball game, a snowball fight, manhunt at Mr. Rubin's tree, the base where we were safe. Yes, the tree was the base. It just made sense. After all, it was the center of the neighborhood, the crossroads. The crossroads where it took root, where we took root, where 2 streets converged, where even kids from other neighborhoods were welcome, always welcome and safe. The tree, the center of Friendly Lane, strong, safe, loving, where the street light provided hope, where Mr. Rubin would watch us and keep us safe. The tree, of course, it made sense. Thank you.
Follow in your shaky footsteps. I have let my daughter do a lot of speaking and been comfortable with that. I want to apologize, actually, we moved here 8 years ago, and it was a choice. We had an opportunity to choose where we wanted to send. I have 3 daughters. They were all here on Thursday. I have my oldest here. We had a choice. We made a choice. I am proud to stand here and know that this is where my daughters attend school, that they are supported by the administration, their teachers. I apologize for not taking a greater role when I've seen things happen. I know it's pretty obvious how I educate my children at home and what message I've taught them, my husband and myself feel strongly. I made a couple of notes that in listening to everyone, I will do whatever I can to participate in sustaining the commitment to continue this movement forward. We are not leaving this town, we are not moving. It's clearly a conversation that is not going to, not a conversation, but it's gonna take a long time. And there needs to be sustained commitment by the adults. My question to the board is, can you please find a way to utilize the voices of the students? They need to be heard. How do we foster, in listening to the parents, how do we foster a safe environment for the children to report? If a child is the recipient of a slur, are they comfortable to go to a teacher or an administrator and know they're going to be supported? Are the teachers comfortable in knowing that they're going to be supported? Is there a way to, rather than just discipline, take it as an opportunity to educate, to have those uncomfortable conversations? We have assemblies. How, is there a way to incorporate the PTA, include the PTA, to make it more inclusive of everyone, to have these uncomfortable conversations? Without them, we will not move forward. None of us can say we understand. We need to hear all of the stories. We need to know everyone else's experiences. We also need to be able to hear those who are not agreeing and have a conversation, even if we agree to disagree, but have it be a respectful conversation. I have tried to sit back because I've really tried to allow this to be about my daughter, but quite frankly, I can't. It's not who I am. I will be committed going forward to participate because it is that important. And that's just, I needed to say that. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sabrina. Here's some notes as well. I'm a horrible public speaker, so forgive me. In regard to what happens in the hallways or on the bus, it seems like there are a lot of teachable moments where a teacher can step in and facilitate a discussion and stop whatever's happening, or teach them what is right, what is wrong, and it's not happening. On the bus, it's so hard because you have one driver, and that driver's responsibility is to get our children here alive and not to teach them about racism. So I don't know if there is a way to have more people on the bus to help watch for that and be trained to help step in and say something, or relay it off to the administrators so that the administrators can help. In regard to the stories, I personally need to hear the stories to learn. What I'm learning about my own stupidity and ignorance, it's from the internet stories. My friends are probably sick of my postings because I post so many, like, oh my God, I didn't know this. And if I don't know it, how can I expect not only my children, but the people who don't read, don't try to educate themselves, right? I also don't know how to approach all conversations with my children. I need your help to teach me how to talk to my kids. In regards to the Spanish, access to Spanish children, I really wish there were Spanish education at a younger level so that my children can talk and interact with those students. In regard to the board and Krista and not being able to remove her, I hope that there is a way that you can come up with a policy, whatever. So if there is a board member that says something so inappropriate and so unacceptable, you are able to remove him or her, or a teacher that has tenure. What I really love about this district is your emails coming to us. Your emails coming to us and asking us for input and information. I'm a much better writer than I am a talker. And I think it also allows people that are nervous about talking, like me, to have a voice and be able to speak out. So I appreciate that, and I hope you have more of that, and not just one time say, hey, how is Zoom going? But keep asking. In terms of activities for our children, we were part of the UU church years ago. We don't have time at this point. And they took on a racism month, where they did different activities. You may have seen it on Facebook, where the children were, the coach had a $100 bill, and all the kids were on one line. And he said, you know, if you have two parents at home, step forward. If you've never had this, step forward. And you could tell that the children of color were on the back line, and the ones of privilege were on the front. And they had a better chance of getting that $100 bill when the race started. So activities like that not only taught me, but it taught my children, and that's what helped me facilitate my conversations with my children. In regards to the social emotional aspect of the school, my children are very lucky. They have access to Mrs. Lamore, Mrs. Cunningham. They have the small group activities with the social emotional support. And every time they come home and talk to me about it, or I hear it on Zoom, I wish all the children had that. Sure, you have your assemblies, sure you have some of the other education access, but those small groups is where my children are learning the most. That's it.
I've spent the last, I don't know, was it hour and a half, however long I've been here, getting the courage to come up here. I haven't been very much of a participator in my children's education in that way, other than making sure that they're, at the bus stop on time. My wife is African American. We moved up here right before my daughter was born, about 10 years ago. And it's been shocking to me to see the difference in the way her experience up here has been from the way my experience up here has been. It's a long story. It's a lot of little things. Almost all of it's little things, but it just builds up. It builds up. It builds up. It builds up. And I didn't think there was anything I could do, And she talked to me about wanting to move somewhere where there was more diversity. I said, but we are part of the diversity here. If everyone who gets to that point leaves, that we can't make a change. And so I've resolved to start being more involved. Joined the Brewster Parents Speak Out group on Facebook. I saw that this was happening. I decided to come here. One of the stories I have from my daughter's time at the school district here is she had a student that came into her class that did not speak English. only spoke Spanish, and none of the other kids were playing with her. And she felt really bad about that, and so she made a book for herself to teach herself some Spanish words so that she could start interacting more and talk to this other child. And it was just so pure and so wonderful to see that. I was thinking, like, if a child can see that there's a need to reach out to somebody who's not being supported or who has a different experience, why can't we all do the same thing? And I'm really glad to see that there's as many people here. I didn't think there would be that many people here, but I haven't participated as much as I could have, and so I'm really glad to just see that there is an effort in this community to try to write that. I appreciate that I don't have as much of the backstory of, like, you know, the previous task force and whatnot, because I haven't been involved in that way. But I'm going to be involved to the best of my ability moving forward, because, you know, I want the best for my children, and the best for my children is a school district that is the best for all of the children in that school district, not just for her, and not just for people who look like me. Thank you.
Hi, sorry to keep taking away. I just keep thinking of different things. That's why we need a new task force. There's so many issues, so many things to talk about. So many things, so many issues to talk about. When we talk about, like, race and these sorts of issues, to me there's always like a few big elephants in the room that people don't want to talk about because it's uncomfortable. Like, people said things about the comfort level. And one of the big elements to me is sometimes it kind of goes along politics sometimes. And when I said earlier about my son, both my sons being said certain things to, which, you know, you can imagine. And like I said, it wasn't necessarily out of hate, but out of ignorance, or just out of just not knowing, ignorant. But so I'm wondering, I don't know if Brewster has like a debate team or a debate class. How can we get kids together to talk about different issues, debate different issues, but still be civil? Because it's all, you know, to a certain extent about ideology on different sides. And so a lot of these kids, young kids, you're learning about politics. They learn it from their families, right? Come on. A 10-year-old wearing a Trump t-shirt, really? Or a Trump, or a 10-year-old wearing a Biden t-shirt, both sides. You know, that's really being kind of encouraged, or that's being inculcated by their parents and families, right? What do they really know? So I wonder if there can be, like, at least in high school, I don't expect that to be in middle school. Maybe it's not in middle school. I don't know, I'm not educated. But at least in high school, there can be some sort of class to teach kids, you know, hey, we can still discuss these issues. I can be ideologically on this end, or on the center, or on this side, but we can still be civil to each other. So that's just an idea, but like I said, we need a task force. And going back to just, you know, ignorance and not people like knowing, as you all know, my boss gave us the day off for Juneteenth. That didn't happen in Putnam County. Why is that? Why is that? And another big elephant in the room is also stereotypes. Some people, we have a divide in part because of stereotypes about what people think about people of color. And there's a lot of hypos that I kind of go through my head. But one of the hypos I asked my wife the other night, you know, actually asked a friend at work, you know, if you had, I watch a lot of the house shows, house and garden shows, and if, you know, there's the show that you go see 3 houses and you pick the one that you want to live in. So I asked my friend at work, I said, if you was on the show, you went, you know, show, but you went saw 3 houses that you liked. One, the house that you liked the best had everything. It checked all the boxes. It was in a cul-de-sac of 15 homes, but 12 were owned by blacks. Would you take that house? Thank you. And the person is a white person that's buying the house. Would they buy that house, the house that has what they want, but 12 out of 15 homes are owned by black people?
Something that you just said, Jason, really struck me, and it's about programs open to kids to do advocacy and to learn. And I just want to tell you that for the past, or when my kids were in school, for about 10 years of that time, I fought really hard to bring a program up here that also brings educational scholarships to the kids here. And it was free. And there's a judge, there are two judges, McShane and Taylor, and they said to me when they realized I lived up here, they said, I've tried. So they said to me, I've been trying for, at that time the program was very new, now it's 20 years old, Judge Sotomayor, and I was talking to Emily's mom, I think. Judge Sotomayor actually judged one of our competitions. We've had these amazing competitions. We've had scholarships at the ends of the competitions, and I fought really hard. Nobody was interested in the Brewster schools. The judge, Judge Taylor, contacted someone up here. They weren't interested. It's time for us as parents to say, we understand what you're saying our kids have to do, and we're telling you what we want our kids to do, and this is what's available, and we want our kids to do it. Our sons competed in things, and I think that's why Christopher is at Harvard Law. I think that's why Alex is at NYU School of Journalism, about to apply to law schools, because of this program where judges and lawyers and people who just wanted to teach kids about the legal system, but also about the institutional issues within the legal system. And these kids learned, and these kids were amazing. My husband and I coach children in the Bronx. I'd rather do it up here. Our kids have advanced. Some of our kids have gotten scholarships. Why can't our kids do that up here? I don't know why we were so opposed. Why two judges who had this great curriculum, I still use the curriculum, were told, no, we don't want any volunteer lawyers up here teaching our kids to advocate and competing for scholarships and going into the city. And we have students in Danbury competing for this, in Danbury High School. I don't want to teach kids at Danbury High School. I want to teach my kids here. And so there's so much, I could go on and on about all the programs that are free and that our kids don't have access to. But yes, at the high school, there's also the Model UN, which is amazing. Our sons did that too. But there are programs outside of Brewster that I think our kids could teach other kids in other places. And we just need to be allowed to bring this in. And I speak Spanish. And I've always said I'm willing to volunteer. I'm an attorney. I'm not a nut necessarily, but I'm an attorney, so I want people to know. Some people say, oh, attorney. But I'm willing to volunteer in the school as well, and to help with the children who speak Spanish. And I've always said this, and I think it's time for us to say, use us, because we have great resources. We all do. This is amazing to hear this. I never thought in 23 years, and I said it the other day on Facebook, Joelle amazes me, because Joelle started the Parents Speak Out, the Brewster Parents Speak Out. And I never thought I'd stand beside my neighbors and say, wow, and to clap about this type of issue. So this has been an amazing thing, and so I thank you as well for everything that you've done and that you're trying to do. And some may not work, but we can't give up. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Tina Alavo. I'm a secretary in the middle school. I'm listening to all your stories, and I want you all to know that I appreciate everybody coming out. I grew up being discriminated against too. I am Spanish. Unfortunately, I do not speak hardly any Spanish. So I'm not very helpful to the students. And when the kids come in from other countries to go to our school, the look of fear on their faces it's very hard. But by the end of the year, they are smiling and they're happy and they are totally conversing with all of us. And you should all know that the door is always open at Wells, and the students are free to come in and speak to any administrator and any counselor or a psychologist. Anybody that they want to, they can certainly come in and speak to them whenever they need to. That's it.
I wanted to be sure that I provided a space for all of you to have your voices heard. If there's something that is specific to you that you do not feel comfortable bringing out today, please email me. Please reach out to me. We will get back to you. We'll talk to you. We'll talk it through with you. We want all of our kids who enter our buildings to feel safe. So I want to talk a little bit about just a couple of global things that are happening in the region, and then I'm going to have Dr. Gosh talk about, and I know we sent the letter out, but we want to talk about what the next steps are on our journey together. So in the region, the Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES is starting, should have started a long time ago, I know, an equity committee, an equity steering committee. So we've got some folks in the region that are starting to do that, and we want to share information so we know what's happening in other buildings, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of great programs happening in Brewster, but there's also a lot of great programs happening in other districts that we don't do. And I think some of you mentioned some of them already. So that is one thing that's happening. They are also reaching out. In my prior experience, in my last district in Gloucester County, New Jersey, there was a student that was actually Schools United for Respect and Equality. It was a club, it was a regional program. There was a summit every year where the kids all got together and they talked about things that are happening. And it covered everything. And it was such a great program. So they're looking at a lot of different programs. So they're reaching out all over, not just in New York, all throughout the country to find out what are some of the great programs that are happening. So that is also happening. So I wanted Dr. Gosh just to talk a little bit about the research and the work at NYU and what our next steps are and how we would love for you to partner with us in this, because this is something that has to live forever. Forever. Long after I'm not here, long after all of us are not here, it has to live, and it has to start with all of us and with our kids. So, Dr. Gosh, would you mind just, filling us in a little bit about I know you had a conversation with NYU yesterday as well.
Right, good morning. To get bigger shoes since Dr. Banlow's been hired. Make sure our mic's the same height. What we're really looking to do is to have a systemic approach to this work. It is multi-year and it is multifaceted. So that's, please just indulge me for a few minutes as I share some thoughts about how we're approaching this. So we mentioned in our letter that we sent out last week that we're partnering with NYU Center for Equity and Transformation of Schools. And what they're going to do for us is to work with us really intensely in order for us to build capacity from within. We don't want to have to call on them, and have this intense work year after year, but instead we want to grow and support and develop our professionals from within. So starting this summer, we are going to have really intensive administrative training, because as our administrators are the instructional leaders, they have to be able to lead conversations with their staff. They have to be able to go into classrooms and help educators as they actually implement this work. And they have to be able to have conversations with parents about what it means for this work and sort of what the big picture is. So part of that work with the administrators is going to be what you said, Ms. Rosenhaus, like common language. We have to start with what is equity, what does this mean within our larger system, what is privilege, what is systemic inequity, and how does this manifest in Brewster. That's eventually where the work will go to. So that's the foundational piece. And as the administrators start to have these really intense conversations, which will last for the summer into the fall and maybe even into the winter, depending on how this works out, a parallel work to that is going to be this root cause analysis. So it's a deep dive into who we are at Brewster. It's It's everything from our achievement data to our discipline data to the demographics of students that are enrolled in honors and AP courses. They will actually bring teams here for 4 days to be with us in the different schools to get a feel of what it's like. They'll have classroom observations, not to necessarily assess teachers, but to, again, talk about what pedagogy is like, what the school culture and climate is like. They'll have student interviews. We really want to make sure we do a full 360 and a full deep dive into who we are, and as this work progresses, the story will sort of unfold. The way they explain it to us, and they're research-based, they've been very successful in other districts. The story of Brewster, the data will lead us to that story. There'll be sort of data books, and I know people hear data and it's kind of like, where's the person in that? But it allows us to take a systemic approach to a systemic problem. It allows us to really take a really thoughtful process and inquiry-based approach to what is the problem, how does it manifest itself in Brewster, before we can jump to any sort of solutions. That this is not going to be a quick fix. It's instead a multi-year commitment. So we're really excited about that. And on that team, there's training that goes into that as well. So there'll be a team of teachers, administrators, parents. We're going to ask parents to be involved. We're not going to ask students to be involved in that part of the work yet, and that's intentional on NYU's part. They want to make sure they create, I forget what they call it, something about safe spaces or protective spaces for students, because even though we're adults that have best intentions, sometimes it doesn't always end up in a way that is easy for kids to hear. But that doesn't mean students aren't going to be involved at all. Apart from the work with NYU, we have talked about really, and we're hearing, the need to really make sure student voice is empowered. What that looks like at K2 is very different than 9-12, but it can still happen. So how can we get these groups to start to think about, even if it's getting students to think about how their school can be improved, maybe it's more recess, I don't know, but it's about them being active citizens in their own context and their own environment. And being able to listen to one another and work and to begin these conversations. So the student group portion is going to be explicit for us and deliberate, and we spoke yesterday, the team of us, with NYU about how we can make sure that starts as soon as we can, that student work piece. We also are involved with an organization called Facing History and Ourselves. We've been involved with them for over 10 years, different iterations throughout the district over that time. But basically what Facing History does is it takes a curricular approach. So it asks students to make sense of the world around them through a historical lens. Problems just don't pop up and are problems one day. There are roots, there are reasons, there are historical, economic, social sort of contexts in which these problems operate. So how can we get students not to think a certain way, but just to think, to have them be empowered to make really informed decisions about the world around them. Some of the language that appealed to us a long time ago when we started the work at the middle school, and even when I was still assistant principal at the high school, was are students upstanders or are they bystanders? What is this? And if we have a circle of obligation, is it just your family that you feel compelled to act on behalf of, or is it maybe your neighbor or beyond your neighbor? Maybe it's someone you don't even know. But like Emily was saying, if there are things that are wrong that are said, people need to stand up and do that. So how can we, first of all, explicitly teach that concept, but then how can students then take it a step further and apply it, and how can we create that safe space in order for that to happen? So that's curricular work, but of course it's within a broader school context. A couple of people mentioned social emotional learning. Thank you for that. That has to be, given what we've been through with the pandemic alone, right? Like, we have been physically disconnected from our kids for a very long time. They're going to come back to a school system. Who knows what it's going to look like in September, but it's going to look different than when they left us. So making sure that they have connections, that they have common experiences, that those relationships, because they're going to be with a new set of teachers in all likelihood, those relationships are formed and are at the forefront of our thought processes and decision making is paramount. And we have these reentry task force from the governor, and we have to put this plan together, which is fine. We'll do that, but this is actually an opportunity for us to think about social emotional learning in a broader context. We have this subgroup that is saying, okay, what does this orientation need to look like for kids when they come back to us? Because there's going to have to be, when do I have to wear masks? What is transportation going to look like? Am I going to be able to walk in the hallway the same way? But there's also the social emotional piece of, this is kind of scary, and I need to make sure the adults around me know that, I need to make sure that I know they care, because they do, and that they're invested in and that success. So having a social emotional framework is also a key piece of this. And finally, I would just say, some of the other work that we're doing, we've gotten some questions after Thursday about the what this looks like at the K-5 level. Of course, social emotional is K-12, and the NYU work is K-12, and the student groups the same thing. But another piece that we have these curriculum review cycles, which honestly have been put on pause because we were just trying to figure out what instruction was going to look like a week from now. But looking intentionally at our curriculum to say, where are these opportunities? I think there was a question at Thursday, which I did not answer very well, which was, how much flexibility do we have with the state? And the answer to that is that there are standards. And then in terms of, there's standards, not curriculum, right? So in terms of social studies, there's a new framework that's out, and yes, there are content pieces to that, but there's also things like inquiry cycles and cross-cutting concepts and different ways to look at it. So it's not just, here's a textbook and this is our curriculum. That can't happen anymore. And it's not just in social studies. Some of the best work that I think that we do is in 8th grade English when we read Warriors Don't Cry and Night. Like those conversations, maybe it's not perfect in its implementation. That falls on the administrators, not the teachers who are having those courageous conversations. So we're making sure we're keeping kids at the center and at the forefront, and we're doing some other things while we're waiting for the NYU work to process through to make sure that we're growing our educators from within and really giving them the tools to support all students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gosh. And I know this gentleman over here used the word operationalize. Operationalizing is extremely important. As we move forward, this is the work that we're going to be continuing, but we are going to need to get together and we're going to have to come up with some goals for the district broadly. And I'm just going to give you an example because it has to live on well past all of us. So, the district has done great work, but we want to continue that great work. How do we do that? We get back together, not only with this group, not only with the equity piece, but also we get back together and we start looking at what are the major things we need to focus on in the Brewster Central School District. Every district, as many of you said, is different. Equity. Is it social emotional learning? Academics? Finance? Facilities? We have to look at every single aspect of our district, come together. 30 people come together, we get some students at the table, we get some folks at the table from in and outside the school community, and come up with a roadmap, a 5-year roadmap for the district to follow. And then you go back and you revisit it, and you say, here's the things we accomplished in equity. Here's the things we accomplished in social emotional learning. Here's the things we accomplished in facilities. But we didn't get to this yet. We didn't do this quite well. So we need to come back to the table and refocus. So that is what we need to do. This work's going to come first, the NYU work, but it has to continue to live on in that type of format. That's the roadmap for Brewster. So I wanted to give the board, see if the board had anything they wanted to add at this point. Their main thing here was to listen to you, but I didn't know if you wanted to add anything. Don't have to, no pressure. Mr. Seaman?
Sorry for the old man walking. These seats are a little bit better than yours, but not very much. First, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. This is the important piece. This is the conversation, and it needs to keep continuing. But related to that, I have to ask for some patience and time. This is not a quick fix. This is not going to be overnight. We are going to try and we are going to fail. It's going to happen. Nobody wants to say it, but it is. We're going to do something wrong, and people are already saying, here it goes again. Going to the same. It's not. Look what's here. This is a fair number of people. We had maybe half the number yesterday. There's probably 100 or so that have watched this. The old saying, you tell a friend and then they tell a friend, and this goes. The conversation continues. But we can't, I've been harping on this, we can't turn on each other, we can't attack each other. That's not a conversation, that's a fight, that's an argument. Nobody learns and nothing happens from it. There'll be no change. Just bang your head against what we have to get along. And it's more the adults. We all admit that we are set in our ways. We've been doing this a long time. We can listen, we can change. Now, a number of weeks ago when there was a peace vigil in the village, people came, they talked, they told their experience, their stories. There was a little conflict and things went ways, and that was more of the adult. But the kids sat there and they would tell their stories, and then they would say, you know, I hear you, I acknowledge you, I love you. We don't say that. This is our kids that are doing that. So obviously somebody's doing something right. The kids are getting it, but we have to continue. So we ask for the patience and the cooperation. You know, this is not something that's going to go away. So keep the meetings, keep the conversations, but we need to be respectful, and we need to reach out to each other and help each other so that we can continue this. Otherwise, this will be another thing that will happen, and it'll be passed, and it'll be pushed on the wayside because it's confrontational. Awkwardness, uncomfortable is fine. Anger and fear is not, and that's what we have to stay away from. So I please ask for just time and patience, and to continue your cooperation. You know, this is greatly appreciated that you've shown up, and I do this thing with my hands. I don't know why I do, but thank you all for coming in. We appreciate it, and the board is 100% behind. You also have to remember with the board, they also have, like you, they have jobs, they have family issues, they have problems. Maybe some people can't do whatever everybody else does. We do the best we can, we try. I mean, you want to be engaged, but you know, this is also, it's a lot of work, as it should be. But we just all need to take that into account when we talk to each other. So, thank you once again.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman. So that is our call to action. We are going to be here for a while. If you have any individual questions you want to talk to us about, please come on over. We'll keep our social distance, we promise. But I want to say I thank you, I appreciate you, and I'm going to say it, I love you. I love you all for being here on a Saturday morning, getting up and spending this time with all of us and being frank and honest. So thank you so much. Have a great day.